I'd like to call to order the regular meeting of the Yampa Valley Housing Authority Board of Directors for our April 2025 meeting. And open it up to any members of the public who might have a comment. If you're online, please raise your hand. Seeing no hands and no hands in the room, I'll close public comment and open it up to board member comment for items that are not on today's agenda. Catherine.
I have a comment. I just want to give a friendly reminder to everyone to take a look. I don't know if anyone reads the articles we include in the policy agenda, but this month there is an article about housing development Breckenridge in the town of Breckenridge. And I think there's sort of key points in it, high level points I want everyone to take a note of. One of which is just the intentionality of the Breckenridge Town Council. They have identified like the last piece of land they can feel they can develop affordable housing. And I think they're partnering with Summit Housing. I'm not certain on that, but they're very intentional in saying, let's get this done. But one of the other key points, they're building 148 units of a combination of single family, duplexes, townhomes. Looks really nice. But their subsidy, and I'm talking about subsidy, the city is doing to make this pencil is $50 million. That's $373,000 a unit. So I think that's just an acknowledgement of the cost that it takes to build in our mountain resorts. A couple other key points about it. They're doing it net zero, which is fantastic. They're also recognizing that they have to adjust they cannot just use the AMI tables for costing because their AMIs are not relative to their wages, same as ours. And the other thing is they're doing lower dollar amounts for the sales. They've heard from their community that they've had a lot of what I would call higher price, quote, affordable, but the community has asked for lower price. Kind of what, Jason and Lou and the development team identified in phase 3 of Cottonwood. So take a look at the article. It's interesting. I know I put some articles in there. You guys are probably like, oh, wonk city, but this one is interesting. So take a look at it.
So is the link to that in the policy minutes? Okay.
Great. Anyone else with a comment? Michael.
I have a question / comment. It's related to property management. Would that be better with Elliot's report?
He's online. That'd be better ask. Is it related to something in Elliot's report or something else?
Yeah, I'll do an Elliot's report.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, that's fine. Anybody else with a comment? Okay, if not, I have two things. The first is that I sent out an email to the board today seeking your feedback on setting goals for Jason for this year. So please take a look at that. And I put in a response date of April 25th. I'm really hoping that we can work collaboratively to get some goals in place before Jason leaves for his extended leave period so that we will have something for him to hit the ground running with when he gets back. And then the other comment that I have is a sad one, which is that Kate Nowak has resigned from the YVHA board effective last Friday. She's having a health-related issue. I don't have any more details on it than that, but obviously I wished her well and said that we really appreciated all of the contributions that she's made. And she affirmed that she really supports our work and will continue to be a positive voice for the Housing Authority and the community. So I'm sad to report that news and wanted to make City Council, and I will speak to Angelica after the meeting, aware. I don't know if there's an appetite to reseat her position on the board currently, or if the preference would be to do it at the normal cycle at the end of the year. But we will stand by and wait to hear from you and the commissioners.
If we reset someone, it would have to go through the city.
Yeah, the city and the county commissioners would have to put out, I'm assuming a request, or maybe you could take candidates that applied at the last round. I don't really know what your process would be. Typically, the appointments are made just at the calendar year, but since this is so early on in the year and we're a busy working board, it might behoove us to consider making another.
That's what I was gonna ask, is if you all would like us to go through the process again, or if you're okay with the board as it is, kind of, I would look for your recommendation.
Okay, I mean, we can talk about it at the executive team. We haven't really had a chance to talk about it. I guess if it's an open question, we will. I didn't know, since we typically don't get one, whether or not you wanted that feedback. So we'll circle up and get back to you.
We are finishing, by the way, our interviews for this year at this point tomorrow. We've done them for the past couple of weeks. Tomorrow will be our final day for any that are outstanding. So this will be added to, just in addition, but we.
Oh, for other boards, you mean?
For all other boards.
Yes, okay.
So that process ends tomorrow. So we'll have all board seats filled with the exception of this.
This new meeting.
But this comes up, we'll
So we can-
resign or.
We can do
so,
that.
Okay,
Yeah. that's-
We have an interview committee and we can do that at any point in time.
okay, great, thank you. All right, anybody else with a board member comment? All right, I'll close board member comment and move to our next agenda item, which is the consent agenda, items A through D, which is the review and approval of the March 13th, 2025 meeting minutes and the February 2025 balance write-offs, check register, and financial statements. Does anybody want to pull an item from the consent agenda? Okay. All those in favor, or sorry, I motion to approve consent agenda items A through D.
Move to approve.
First by Kathy,
Second.
second by Lou. Anything else on the consent agenda for the good of the order? Seeing nothing. All those in favor of approving consent agenda items A through D, please indicate with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing and hearing none, the motion passes unanimously and we'll move to our next agenda item, which is staff reports, and I will turn it over to Jason.
All right, thank you. So just a couple of quick updates. So there's some talking points at the beginning of the agenda related to the community builders process that just got kicked off on Tuesday and Wednesday. So there was a city council meeting on the 8th. And then a deliberation and stewardship team orientation last night. And so this is really getting the sort of like full scope of community engagement kicked off. That's going to last through at least the first phase through the end of August and into September. And so the couple things just to update you on related to that. All of the information related to what's going on there will be housed on the Engage Steamboat website, which is the city's engagement web platform. That has yet to be populated, but will be in the coming days and into next week. And so all of the information about when the meetings are and where, all the recaps from the meetings and all of that information will be housed in that location so that it's easily accessible. The deliberation and stewardship team, which is essentially in our sort of original vernacular, the steering committee 2.0, is just got started yesterday. As I think I updated you guys last month, it is intentionally balanced with people that were, critical or skeptical of the original Brown Range proposal, not supportive of it, and people who are supportive of it, very supportive of it. All like very balanced across all of the sort of opinions about affordable housing, about the role of the housing story, the city, Brown Range and affordable housing. And so I would say that they got off to a really good start yesterday, and I want to give a little bit of kudos to the community builders team. They started it out really well. They started out the meeting with everybody kind of explaining what it is that they love about this community, and there were commonalities amongst anyone. It really didn't matter your perspective on Brown Range. Everybody loves this community for the same reasons. The character of the community, the access to recreation, all of those things, it's a great place to raise a family. All of those things, everybody kind of held together. So they really started off with identifying the commonalities that exist in these people that ultimately have had diametrically opposed positions on the Brown Ranch project. And so that's getting kicked off in a really good way. The actual makeup of the deliberation stewardship team is going to be announced relatively soon. Essentially, everyone was given an opportunity at that meeting to say like, yeah, I'm out. I'm not doing this. And I don't think anyone's probably going to take up that opportunity, but everyone's going to essentially be opting in after this meeting. And it's going to be, I think, a productive group that will balance all of the various interests that exist in the community and perspectives on Brown Ranch and development and just writ large. So I'm excited to see that get kicked off. I think it has started off over the course of the last, basically this week, as they've done a really good job getting it moving.
Do we have anyone in this room on that deliberation and stewardship committee?
No, there's purposely no elected, appointed board members, officials, or anything like that on the deliberation. There are some folks that were part of like the campaign to support Brown Ranch, people on the campaign to oppose Brown Ranch. And so there's definitely like some of those characters. And then there's a lot of folks that are new to this process as well.
How many people?
It's 40.
Whoa.
I guess.
Whoa.
Quick question, Nick, how many people actually attended last night? Did all 40 show up?
I mean, I think it was like 38,
Pretty good.
40. I mean, it was, it was very well attended.
I do have another comment too. My opinion, just, I really think, and this is also directed to the city council, I don't think very many people in the community know what engaged steamboat is. It's hard to find. Why are we not posting these items on the city webpage under our normal agenda items? Because that's where people go to look for items. And if the city, and this is obviously this is a city run, the city's process, and I support it, but I would just like to make the request to council to put it on the agenda pages where people go to look. And I think if we're gonna try to utilize this engaged steamboat, I don't think that's the best way to connect with people. But I think we need to have something front and center on our webpage that says community builder process and links to it. Because like the meeting on Tuesday night, the press wasn't aware of. I don't know if it wasn't posted last night. So I think we need to use our normal channels of communication to let the community know. And my next question is, when are we going to actually start seeing some reports of these meetings? Because I believe the PCT group, you guys have already got some really good work done. I mean, haven't you had a few meetings now?
Yeah, it's largely been in preparation for the DST meetings. So I don't know how much to report out there is. The product of those meetings is the actual DST meeting and some of those. So look, let's touch base on the sideline to talk about that.
Okay, but I just think we need to find, I want to make sure that the community has an easy way to do this. We don't have to look somewhere new on it. So that's just my request on that. I think it's important. Transparency is critical on this.
We had a discussion, if I may, at the council on Tuesday about, I want to talk more about their community engagement plan and strategy, and that was kind of a big question mark. Like, we want to see that, and it's not ready yet. But I wanted to look different than how we did Brown Ranch, because clearly we didn't reach the community effectively with all the information, or there was too much information. I don't quite know what the issue was, but I want to make sure that the community is as informed as possible of what's going on. And they also talked about, like, community builders said that basically the community can attend these meetings and they want to be transparent, but also kind of like a fishbowl, like the community can come and watch what's going on, but it might be hard for them to participate, or like they're gonna probably break this group of 40 up into like little groups. So it might be hard to take exact minutes, and it's really kind of like a working group. So I'm not sure if you have recommendations on how we can report out on those. They might be go back to.
I think the key thing is to notice, have it on the agenda page and have the agenda posted so people can see what their opportunity is. And these guys know how to do reports on retreats and stuff. That's their jam, so.
Right, and one other thing, just to update you on, I've been working with the city manager on a process to address any public comments that might come to, say, a city council meeting related to YVHA business. And so our goal there is to make sure that we're responding to those comments in a timely manner, that we're following up with the appropriate, like obviously addressing the comment that was made, making sure we understand everything that's going on there, and then following up to, whether it's the city council, the county commissioners who get that comment. And so we're working on that. There were some comments made last week by a member of the community that I've already followed up with that member of the community. And then we're gonna circle back, report back to the board and to the city council, what the outcome of those conversations were, so that we can kind of close the loop on that, those comments that are made. Well, ultimately, what it means is, like, if we're not at a council meeting for whatever reason, then, the city staff will reach out to us and let us know what's going on. It's super easy to go back and listen to the comments. And then reach out to that person and address it. So I just want you guys to know that we're sort of like building out a process surrounding that to address those components.
Do you have an update for those comments that the citizen made?
What's that?
Do you have an update for us from those comments that were made at the city council?
I'll be following up with an email to everyone. Yep.
That's my question.
Last thing, and just from the Elliot's staff report side of things, the guy's on vacation, but he's still on the meeting. So hope that he can get back to being on vacation relatively quickly. But I did want to just like highlight for everybody that next week on Thursday, there is a topping out ceremony for Mid-Valley. And so that is something that you guys are all invited to. We're not going to make like a gigantic production of it, primarily because it came up on this pretty quickly. We're like, wow, we're topping out already. But we did want to sort of celebrate that important moment. And so that we'll send out some information regarding that. Ultimately, it's a big milestone for the development, and wanted to make sure that you guys were all had an opportunity to be there. I think some of the best value there is to be on site and see what's being built, see the views, see the progress. So
Jason, when did you say it is?
it is
Thursday.
Thursday.
I have a couple of questions on your report and Elliot's report, if now's the good time.
Okay.
Yep.
Do we have any update from the federal agencies on Hilltop, or are we just waiting to see what happens with the budget?
So we have had a couple of recent meetings, one with the city attorney to kind of kick things back off related to the lease negotiations, of which I think we're quite close on. And then Emily and I have a meeting with the Forest Service staff next week to get things moving with them as well. They have a few things that they need to be working on, which is particularly the appraisal and the NEPA process that they need to go through. So we are still moving forward, which is great news.
Thank you for following up on the public comment aspect of things. And then just a couple questions on the survey. Was that part of Elliot's report, or is that?
The community survey.
Yeah.
Emily can, I think, answer some questions if you have any specific ones.
Okay, yeah, just a couple. So, this survey was done regionally, right? for Moffett County as well as South County?
Yes, it was also distributed in Grand County for people who live in Grand County and commute into route to work.
Awesome. And we had 194 respondents.
Wait, are we talking about it?
So that's, the
Survey.
document that's in there is the prospective buyer list for the Cottonwoods,
Oh,
not the regional.
Yeah, I was talking about the regional housing
Okay.
survey for our housing market and demand study. So
Oh,
two
that's
different
great.
issues.
that's helpful. I was, okay.
We had over 2,500 responses to the housing market and demand study survey.
And when is that gonna be?
So it closed on March 31st. And now the consultants are compiling all the data, analyzing it, doing all the kind of like cross-cutting analysis. And the final report will be released in early June.
You know, interesting enough, Dakota, that was one of my questions too. I was wondering if that is going to be something that is going to be presented to the board, like in the June or July board meetings, so we can do a big community outreach. So, you know, present it to the board. Is that like a potential future agenda item for June, July?
Yes, in the scope that we have with Economic Planning Systems, which is the prime consultant on the housing market and demand study, we have scoped 2 public meetings. So we're internally working through the best audiences and timing. We think obviously the YVHA board is a really important audience. Also the possibly the Brown Ranch deliberation and stewardship team.
So are you thinking of presenting it in a board meeting or to us so we can ask questions on it type of deal, or what are you thinking?
We're not certain yet. We're trying to, I think, as Emily mentioned, trying to figure out what the best audience is to get that. Whereas this is a pretty good internal audience. It does not reach a lot of people in the community. And so from that standpoint, we need to, like, we've got 2 presentations from EPS scoped out. What's the best places where we can really utilize that? We can certainly do an internal report out of it. You know, to this board at June or July. I say that not being here for either of those meetings, so have it. But we just want to be strategic about how we utilize the time that we have with EPS to put that information out.
I was wondering the community builders could facilitate like one of their kind of workshops with the community.
Potentially, yeah. Yeah, we're working that's part of the stuff that we work on at the project collaboration team level. It's like, how do we integrate in this new information and when's the right time based on the curriculum of learning that's happening amongst the community and amongst the DST. We don't have an official, like, we know exactly when we're gonna present this out to provide for you now, but we will be working on that.
Thank you.
Yes.
I'll save my questions then for when we get to the prospective buyer. We there.
Okay. Anything else for Jason, for Elliot, or any of the other staff?
So on Elliot's portion of his staff report related to property updates, this is more specific to the meeting minutes that went out from the property management team on the 19th. There was a number of things listed during the site visit at Engler's 400 in terms of issues that were observed from a maintenance and safety and physical condition. And the follow-up item noted in the minutes was that they would be revisited in July. And I was just curious if there was anything more timely that we could do, given the severity of some of those issues.
You want me to take that?
And that it's our newest property.
So
Yeah.
we had a call last week with Matt Gillum and Aaron Welch with OPG, and they have those items from the property walks that we did, and they've made notes that they were going to be following up on those items and addressing them. So we can certainly circle back with them and just see what their timeline is. I think it was more of a general conversation that we had about getting those things addressed, but can press them a little bit more for specific timelines.
The plan was to revisit the site and do another property walk by the property management team in July. So we weren't deferring trying to move forward and make sure that action is taken on those items. We just have sort of tentatively scheduled July as the time when we could go back and revisit and recheck. Is that,
Wasn't there some communication with the fire chief or from the fire on some of those items?
Yeah,
not any? That was at Alpenglow, right?
in
Elliot?
Alpenglow, yes.
Yeah, we had an issue that the property management team noted when we were on site for our semi-annual walk at Alpenglow, which is that there are a number of bicycles that are being stored, particularly in building A, that's the one by the office, that are prohibiting the ability for emergency services to be able to access units. So we had noted this as a previous problem and have elevated that by reporting it to the fire chief.
Elliot, is it fair to ask then, I guess, that you could provide future updates related to your conversations with OPG and upcoming property management team meeting minutes and the next month's report, just so we can track that?
It's definitely fair because we're going to be tracking that issue at the property management team. So it will be in our meeting minutes.
Yeah,
The residents aware of that timeline to like address their concerns?
These weren't resident concerns. These were concerns that the property management team had when walking the site.
Right, but I'm wondering if the residents are aware of the concerns and aware of like the timeline to address the concerns.
I think maybe what she's saying is like, do we know if the residents are feeling the same concern as the property management team, as being the residents on site and seeing these issues?
I don't know that.
I haven't gotten any feedback.
Anything else? Okay. Thanks for being on, Elliot. Maybe you go back to vacation now.
okay, I'll stick around a little bit longer.
Elliot's
Got nothing else to do.
You're the best. All right, so we'll close staff reports and we'll move on to our next agenda item, which is the approval of the deed restriction implementation plan.
Dakota had one more question.
Sorry, Dakota.
Dakota had that question.
Yeah, we kind of skipped over the resident.
Sorry. I forgot that that was attached to the bottom of Elliot's
That's
report.
okay.
Go ahead.
Well, I was really looking at, the number of respondents, the AMIs that they feel they're related with, and then the kind of the unit type that they're looking for. And I guess I'm just curious, do we feel like these responses are aligned with what we'll be providing at Mid-Valley? Seems like most people are looking for maybe the 100 to 120 range, but also like the 50 to 80% AMI range was the next largest, and 2 to 3 bedrooms were highly rated.
Yeah, so there's two components with this prospective buyer form that we've kind of been discussing. There's a section of the community that we haven't been able to reach yet that I think would indicate a jump in that 120 to 140 component. I just don't think we've hit that. And I think part of our strategy and our marketing strategy moving forward is all the projects that we've done thus far have been geared towards lower income. So I think there's still an education piece that the Yampa Valley Housing Authority can provide stuff for middle income. I think we're missing that a little bit. I think we'll hit that once we set the sales prices for Mid-Valley. We'll start to see that interest and hopefully these graphs line out a little bit. I would say under the 100% AMI, as Araceli and I have gone through and seen the names of residents and who's there. I think there's still also a little bit of confusion that this is a rental property, not a for sale property. So I think once we actually start the qualifications, you're actually going to see that number shift down just a little bit because it's not a rental. So there's definitely some of that because we do have a lot of residents, which I think is phenomenal from our low income properties that are, this could be that maybe that mobility, right? That next step that we're trying to create. But it's still a little hard to say without having prices set exactly if we truly are missing something, or if it's just an education piece, because what we've done thus far has been geared towards that kind of under 100% mark.
And so, okay, thank you, that's helpful. When it comes to the units that are gonna be priced at the 140% AMI range, are we kind of building in some flexibility for people? Like, I know that they could apply up, like, they qualify for 130, but they could apply for the 140 range. But then, you know, like Catherine mentioned earlier, are we offering any kind of flexibility where maybe, you know, the AMIs are really high for our community in certain ways? So like, if somebody could apply for that 140, but maybe they're really like needing a lower cost, do we have that flexibility?
Yeah, I think that's definitely a conversation we're having through our pricing strategy. There's a lot of moving levers when it comes to setting these prices, right? Everything from assigning the unit to the AMI, what floor is it on, what's it view, you know, what's it view? Is it attached to an underground parking? Is it attached to a carport? Do we need to worry about some of the stratifications from the 1-bedrooms going from the 120s to 140s, where can we pull that lever where we can price some of them a little lower? Like, so there's a lot of moving mechanisms that we're just starting to dive into. I guess I'll just kind of tag into this now. So the real estate, we had a meeting yesterday. It's right yesterday. It started this conversation. We're having another one. We're doing a joint meeting with the development team also to bring this pricing kind of structure in to gear up for the May meeting. So we kind of have this planned out. We'll also be having our first meeting with the agency on Monday. So they'll be able to bring their expertise in some of this for sale components in to really make sure that we've got like a plan A that we feel really comfortable with. But what happens if we don't stay on plan A? Like, what other levers do we have to move and how can we adjust for things given we still are 6 to 8 months out for really knowing what's going to happen. So those are all kind of starting the timelines being set.
Yeah, just to follow up on that. There's a lot of factors that go into how our pricing strategy, right? There is the practical economics of the development. There is our partnership agreement with Lone Tree. There is what we think will derive the most value to the community and what will sell. All of that is gonna go into, are gonna be inputs into our pricing strategy. And so, as Lala mentioned, the development, or sorry, the property management, real estate team is working on that currently. We will then be bringing in the development team, and ultimately we will be doing a workshop on this with the board in May. So the opportunity to have a real in-depth conversation about the AMI stratification, or if there needs to be some changes, we will have all the information to have that type of a conversation in May.
Great,
I-
thank you.
I mean, Jace, if I can follow up also on what Dakota's asking. Would it be clearer if, A, we understood this is for buildings 1 and 2?
Correct.
Phase 1, which is not the entire Cottonwoods project. Compare the information we're getting back to how many units we've allocated from our financial models to what this feedback is. You know, AMI by, you know, I want a 2-bedroom, but I'm in the 80% AMI, so, you know, probably not gonna happen, that kind of thing. But we also have some rough estimates of what building 3 may or may not be, and what building 4 may or may not be. And what stratification we are currently thinking about, and how does that reflect the feedback we've gotten?
Yeah, so I think all of that is to say there's a lot of variables that are going into this equation, and we are currently working on it. This is one bit of information, but there's many others that are coming in to help inform that. So stay tuned. This is a tease for the exciting May board meeting. I think y'all might want to plan on that board meeting being a little longer than the normal board meeting. Probably plan for a 3-hour meeting.
And yeah, this is also helpful. I think I've said this before, but I worry that this first phase might, be a little hard for the community to wrap their head around if we don't, really sell those units at the 140 range. And, are they gonna, we're really trying to build trust with the community that we have another community of what they want, what they need, and how we can best meet those needs. So I just appreciate all the work that you're doing to figure out what kind of levers we can pull and make sure that we can meet those needs to the best of our abilities.
Well, and to be honest, one of those levers to be pulled is bringing in more subsidy. And so that may be a conversation that needs to be had, because at some point you cross the threshold of people are now losing money, like the housing authority or our partners are losing money to sell them at a certain level. And so how are we going to make that? How are we going to handle the practical economics of it as well? So that is part of what we are ideally going to be identifying here is there, based on what we believe the right pricing setup is for this whole property, how does that marry with the current project model? And how do we need to bring in additional subsidy? Where are we going to bring that in from? Ideally, we will have a recommendation on that for the May meeting.
And that's a really good point, because Jason and Emily and the development team and everyone have done a phenomenal job over the past years since we passed a little bitty mill levy with leveraging the funds to build a high dollar, instead of, bring a lot of money to the community. But we also have the ARPA funding, things like that. I think at some point, we're gonna have to recognize as a community, that's why I brought up Breckenridge, that we have to, if we want to have affordable units, particularly for sale, we need more subsidy from our community, which is why we passed the FDR tax.
I would just add one more piece about just specific to this form. You can't, it's hard to separate the what you're bringing up observationally around the data that's being collected in this form. This form isn't, what do you want to see there? This is who's interested in what's being offered there. So like, this isn't a needs assessment. This is just for us as a planning tool. And to Lou's points, there's absolutely applications where we can apply this data into future projects and planning, but try not to, and I want to just echo Lala's points that our primary audience has been housing authority followers, which we know are in those lower AMI tiers. So more to come on broadening the audience and reaching some of those other demographics. And just remember the points about saleability for our May meeting. I think chatting about.
Lots of Easter eggs here for everyone to work through.
It'd be so fun. All right. Any other questions for Jason or staff on the staff reports? Mark.
On page 26, there's a reference to deed restriction consulting fee. What is that?
Well, that's the next agenda item.
Next one.
Page 26 of the packet.
That's the fee schedule for.
Yes, the deed restriction consulting fee would be so. It's to try and allocate for some of, I would say, Jason's time, and a component he gives X amount of hours to people that are trying to work through some of this, but beyond a certain amount to try and recoup the cost of his time.
Are you talking about it on the?
On the deed
profit-
restriction
On the
implementation
profit
plan.
loss?
No, fines and fee and fine schedule.
Oh,
That-
Example of the
Okay.
draft.
So we
Let's get to that agenda.
So we moved to the next agenda item, which is the deed restriction implementation plan with Mark's.
Sorry.
And just to clarify, it's not a fee that's charged to residents, it's charged to organizations that are seeking consulting.
And it's not our property, it's for other, it's for.
Right, it's other, yeah, or lawless time.
Or anyone else.
That address your question, Mark?
We received a fee from the hospital to, it wasn't deed restriction necessarily, but it was qualification, was it not?
Mhm.
So we just want to recognize when other developers, as part of the process, have a deed restriction, we can charge some sort of fee
This is particularly important if, and this is part of a conversation we've had with the county planning department. As they're implementing their housing program, they would like to see the housing authority in a position of doing the compliance checking or some of that stuff. That would be how we would charge that fee. We would charge it to essentially the owner or the developer. So that we could verify compliance with this, with the county's housing requirement. So that's a little, we're getting a little deep into the weeds of this. Lala, would you mind just kind of doing a quick update on the drips? So we can.
Yeah, so obviously the deed restriction implementation plan is how we plan to qualify and move, qualify through the deed restriction, which is the legally recorded document that we have to hold to. We tried to reduce the gray area, just so this is a document we plan on being somewhat forward facing, so that people interested understand the process that they will be going through to be applying for a unit at Mid Valley. Thank you, Jim, for reading and all of your comments back from the drip. I didn't hear too much other feedback, so this is kind of the document in final form that we would like to get up on the website. We'll move forward with kind of some of RSLE and I doing community presentations. We can provide this document to gain clarity. Just kind of start moving forward and letting people know what the process is.
Can you remind me again, and sorry if I've already asked this, but why is it just Route County workers that qualify, not Moffett as well?
That's what we put in the deed restriction.
Yeah.
Well, if Moffett County workers are working in Moffett County, then.
Or sorry, yeah, or no, resident, like.
It's not residents,
It's
it's
not
people who
residents.
work. So
Okay.
it applies to residents of
Yeah.
both counties, yes.
You can look, you can like be living in Moffett County, you just have to work in Route County to correct. Okay,
Correct.
thank you.
One household member.
Okay. Something that was just a little confusing, when it comes to them having interests in other properties and things. So if somebody has an Roth IRA, they have to know exactly what all those, they have to like sell off any interest that might be related to real estate before they can qualify. That just seems really complicated and like a big burden on us to be able to ensure. It was page 49.
All right, let me pull it up just so I can read it correctly.
And a burden for them, like how do you?
So
it's
it
just
excludes.
Excluding investment and excluding investments.
IRA. This is the physical ownership in a real estate asset, not an ownership in a
Thank you.
real estate security.
Thank you. All right. And then last question, when do you anticipate the lottery opening? One.
So we're gonna talk about that lottery in the
Okay.
next.
Agenda item. Anything else on the deed restriction implementation policy, Mark?
So you indicate this is the final form. George, you're gonna review this, right?
I have not been asked to, no.
Then I think that George should review this and tie the two documents together. And, excuse me. And one recommendation I had in the past was that the definitions of the deed restriction and the definitions in the DRIP be identical. And then just from a perspective of legalese and again, the two documents tying together, I think definitely George should review this. I mean, it's another legal document that is tying directly to the deed restriction and to this whole operation. So that would be a recommendation I'd have when there's if it needs to, I mean, if we need to make that a motion, then at some point I'd make that a motion. Or if we can just agree that he'll do that, I'm fine with that as well. I just assumed that would happen.
So you're saying that you would like us to make our motion conditional on a final review from George and ensuring that the definitions between the deed restriction and the deed restriction.
Yeah, if he otherwise was not gonna do it, yes, I would.
I would second that.
And it wasn't a motion yet.
But I would second it when it gets there.
Okay. Then, under the inspection clause, I brought this point up one other time, to have the seller conduct a property inspection is not the typical order of business. It isn't like this can't happen, but that's not typically how it's done.
Which section are you looking at, Mark?
6B. What page?
And I don't know what page it's on, I just had some notes. But it's. And along that line, in that inspection report, there were a number of items that are written into the document that the owner would have to address if there was a problem, and there's 3 that are they're really inappropriate. Well, one is radon, a second is roof damage, a third is foundation. Those are building issues. Those are not unit issues. If there's a radon problem, that's a building problem. And the unit owner has nothing to do with the roof, and they have nothing to do with the foundation. So those, in my opinion, should be removed from this list.
Yeah, so just in the last board meeting, when I mentioned around the drip, that this document is initially set for Mid-Valley, but it's going to grow to encompass all of our deed restrictions. That's why the foundation could, if applicable, it's not applicable at Mid-Valley. It's just for a future. We do have single-family homes and others underneath our deed restrictions. So that's why that was included.
Paula, is it appropriate to add, if applicable, to the radon testing as well?
Yes, absolutely.
If it was a single family home, then it would apply. But these are condos, so it doesn't apply here.
Right.
I will, Mark. I think your question on 6B about the inspection, my understanding is that's an inspection for the housing authority to determine if there's an issue with the maximum resale price. Not in lieu of a buyer doing their own inspection, just to be clear.
Correct, and because because the housing authority is involved in setting the pricing for this, that's, I think, the reason why it deviates from, a more market rate.
I get what you're doing. It's just, it's not the norm, and then the buyer will probably still do one.
Yes,
Or at least they may.
They'll have the opportunity.
they have the opportunity to do so.
Certainly.
Mark, is it clear enough if it just says if applicable, or does it need to define what applicable is? Do you think? I mean, like, because I read it like if applicable too, is it just standard operating procedure? If it's a condo, you don't have to, it's not applicable. Is that clear enough?
Correct. I mean, you would know in the declarations what the responsibility of the owner is. So it is clear.
Okay, so that's good enough, you thought, that if applicable works for you?
For one more time.
I said, the phrasing, just saying if applicable after the like roof and stuff, do you think that's sufficient, I guess is what I'm asking.
If applicable?
Yeah,
Depends on how you define if.
I guess you could leave it in, but to me, it's confusing because in the case of the condominium, it's simply not.
okay.
Right, but this document's gonna be used for other things besides condominium, so that we don't have separate documents for every single one.
Yeah.
So I think.
We need language to allow it to apply broadly. So our language now is if applicable. If you don't.
I get it. Inside this room, we all understand it's not applicable, but to me, when you put something like that in, that it's clearly not applicable in this case, it's just confuses. I mean, in the event that we have single family homes down the road that are the housing authorities, then I'd say there'd be a separate document for those.
I mean, I think you could.
Mark,
I
in the time that
disagree.
it takes someone to ask that question and us to draft a new document, that question's already answered. So I think it's fine.
Yeah, I agree.
I think it's fine. I think.
I had this original comment and added the if applicable because of my comment. So I also think it's fine.
I think, you know, I think Mark might be saying from a clarity perspective, on this, you could easily say applicable for single family homes only.
If it said that, then I'd be fine.
Or duplex.
Because if it just says,
I mean.
I think if applicable,
Covers that. I think
Covers
it
that.
Covers that. You don't wanna make the document like too complicated with other language, like I think if applicable covers all of that.
This is a
okay, I'm,
procedure. It's not a legal document.
Correct.
It's board-approved policy.
It's a policy.
Yeah, it's policy.
And policies can be changed if we have to.
it's one of those, if there's ever a problem, then it becomes the document, so it's whatever.
Okay.
okay, anything else?
To that point, this being such a large and complicated policy, what's the format for changing this as we go through and learn lessons and need to make adjustments, as Mark is bringing up? What's the plan there of who's gonna review that? How's that brought to the board? How are we gonna address that?
So I would assume that this document is going to be reviewed and updated annually. I would say if there's any initial substantial changes, they would go to the real estate team first to determine just how big, and then whether that needs to come back to the board for a formal approval, or if it's just a highlight through our learning process, we've learned these things, so this was shifted this way. Would be my guess.
Yeah, I mean, having gone through like, well, let's take something much bigger, the Unified Development Code at the county, right? Like that is an over 200-page document that we approved. And we're going through amendments now, right? Because there was a mistake here, or we're realizing this. And it's very easy to amend, to bring it up and say, hey, like this is something that we need to add, or this is something that we've learned. With a policy or a code, like you're not gonna get everything right the first time. You do your best, but it's not gonna be something that is incredibly painful to change. And so I think in order to make progress, we need to approve this and then see how it works, because we're not gonna know what problems arise. We're sitting here talking about a problem that might not exist, right? Like we could go through this for 2 years and never, ever have someone have a complaint or a problem with if applicable. But now we've spent 20 minutes debating if applicable. So let's wait and see if people have problems, and if they do, we can edit the language.
I'm asking about the process.
Yeah, I think.
The process would, I mean, in my opinion, would be those questions are brought to the staff brings that to the board puts it on the agenda to make an amendment.
So Cole, were you asking then if we should just do it as needed, or if we should like schedule an annual review, or?
That's what I was asking.
I think that's Cole's question.
Well, I kind of see some alignment with maybe a process that Lou's working on, the quality management program, where like in that quality management program, we can say like, we have internal reviews annually, and we can define that process there.
And that's what Lois said.
Yeah,
We do it annually.
initially. I like that the property management will keep a closer eye on this and bring changes, material or not. If this document changes, it needs to be board approved.
Agreed. Yeah, the thought behind this document was for all of our other deed restrictions, we didn't have a line out.
Yeah.
It's been gray. So this is the first time we've produced a document like this. And I would like to unify it across all of our stuff moving forward. We're excited for like even stuff that the city has to have a unified process with deed restrictions, so that it's not, well, you do this at one and you do this at another. What's it look like?
Anybody else? Great. Then I will seek a motion to approve the deed restriction implementation plan with the condition that the deed restriction implementation plan is reviewed by George Eck, and that the definitions in the deed restriction implementation plan are tied to the definitions in the deed restriction, and that an amendment is, or an edit is made to include, if applicable, in parentheses, after radon as a condition of the inspections. First by Jess.
Second.
Second by Kathy. Anything else on this item for the good of the order?
Did you say just radon or did you say radon roof and foundation?
The roof and foundation already have, if applicable, in parentheses after them.
Just for clarity, do you have the section number for why that is in the document?
It's 6B.
6B.
Got it, thank you.
Yeah, that version has it.
Yes.
Yes. Anything else on this item? All those in favor, please indicate with aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Seeing and hearing none, the motion passes unanimously. And we'll move to our next agenda item, which is the review and approval of the lottery implementation plan.
All right, so this is the main event that I know everyone, Dakota especially, has been hoping to get to. On this, I just want to kind of talk about what the expectation is around this document. Our hope is that this document can be voted on today by the board. It will not be the final version of this. There will be a subsequent update to this when we have a little bit more specificity around when we know exactly the 100% AMI lottery is going to be run and who's going to run the lottery and some of those very specific items. However, the broad structure of the lottery is built out. And we need to be able to start communicating that to the community. To say, this is the way it's going to be run. These are the considerations that go into your weighting in the lottery. This is how we're going to have oversight of what's going on. And these are, how the draws are generally going to be run. From the lowest AMI units to the highest AMI units, from the largest bedrooms to the smallest bedrooms, bedroom count. All of that information is in here. Our goal here is to essentially cast the broad structure of this document now so that we can communicate out to the community and then fill in some of those more minor details of exactly how we're going to implement. Likely in August. So that we can be prepared to roll out the lotteries in probably October, November, December. People that will ultimately be closing on units in January, February, March.
Hey, Jason, I do have, and I'm sorry, I spoke with Kathy and I did not realize you're asking for approval today if there is still feedback, but I do think is one very important clarification we need to have in this document. And that is how we are going to equitably distribute the units between the AMI categories. Because I know the way it's worded right now, the way I read it, the lower AMI gets first pick of all the units. And I am, my opinion, and I know usually I'm the one champion for the lower income, but I think there needs to be a defined, fair way that we are assigning the units to the different AMI categories. I think when we discussed the lottery months ago, I thought that, Lala, correct me if I'm wrong, that you're going to have a certain units would be identified for each AMI category.
Yep.
And I just think we need to know how we're being fair on that. I mean, who's getting the good views? Who's getting the garages? I just want to make sure that that the fairness is very fair throughout all the AMI categories. And I just like to know how we're gonna, and I asked Kathy on that and I said that I think that's still to be defined. Is that right? Or?
Yeah, that'll be part of our price setting strategy. So before the lottery happens, you will have, we're working on a document to kind of show the building. You can see A101 carved out and you'll know this is a 100% unit or that's 140% unit. This is the sales price of this one based on its location or its view or whatever those other things are.
Or
So
parking
that's
scenario. Yeah.
correct, or it's a parking scenario. So that'll be all dialed in and figured out. So once you go to the lottery, you know that 204 is a 1-bedroom for 140% that's attached to garage stall 29. You will have all of that information for your selections. So part of the pricing strategy will be going through kind of that equitable like deviation, so it's not like the top floor is all 140 units or.
Yeah, and so I would make a suggestion then,
Uh-huh.
just in this document, that where it says, and I don't know the exact page, that where you said that you say something like the 110% is first, so you can ensure that they get their units. Well, if those units are already defined for that AMI percent, it doesn't really matter who goes first. And it's just the way
It does matter who goes first, Catherine, because if people qualify for 110% AMI, but also could then participate in the 120% AMI lottery, we want them to be able to do that. So it doesn't have to do with unit selection. That has to do with the order of running lotteries, which relates to the ability for the lower income residents who have saved money and are able to move into higher income tiers to qualify for more lottery participation.
Okay, I think that's fine, and I think this sounds like we're gonna have more discussion of how that equitable distribution is in May. I just think the way it's worded right now implies that that the first lottery people just get to come in and pick whichever unit they want. So I just don't think that, I mean, just say they're going first, but don't say why. I think it's just necessary. Might be clearer. Because when I read it, I thought that it read that whatever group goes first gets their pick of the entire units.
Maybe.
At that AMI level, yeah.
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
just gonna be units attached to,
Yeah.
numbers attached to the
Okay, where is that?
units that they can apply for.
If I
Yeah.
may, maybe just adding in the run 100% lottery, a lottery for the 3-bedroom units, just put the 100% AMI 3-bedroom
Yeah,
units.
allocation or something.
Yeah, something like that. I think it might be clearer. Is a nice suggestion.
Okay.
But to clarify your point, the first person, 3-bedroom, 100% AMI, they don't get a choice of every 3-bedroom that's in the unit. They will get a choice of the 2 3-bedroom units that are dedicated to 100% AMI. And so they want, it's not a scenario where the first people get to cherry pick any 3-bed, like, yo, I'm taking that one. We are going to predetermine what those are, and their pricing will reflect the unique attributes of that unit. And those unique attributes are what floor are they on? What way do they face, meaning what view they have? Like, are they looking at the ski area? Or are they looking at Emerald Mountain? Are they looking at South Valley? Or are they looking north towards town? And what sort of like, whether they have an assigned underground, like podium parking place with gear storage, or whether they have an assigned carport outside of the building.
Yeah, and that's what I thought Lala had said last time, but the way I read the document, I read it that it sounded like they got cherry picked from everything. I just didn't want the community, like if we're trying to get this out so people can start looking at it, I just wanted to make sure that was very clear that a potential buyer wasn't thinking that, oh yay, I get to pick anything. So I just think.
No, and that'll be really clear right off the bat when we start, when we identify pricing, you will be able to look at essentially a picture of the building, and it will be like, here's the unit, kind of highlight it, and here are all the attributes. It's a 2-bedroom, it's 140% AMI, it has ski area views, it's it has a carport, and the price is this.
We can add an exhibit too of like an Excel sheet that's got all the units with the pricing listed, because that'll be part of the sales packet. So it's in there also for that clarity.
Yeah.
I think George's suggestion fixes it, like just adding to like a lottery for the 3-bedroom, 100% AMI units makes it,
Yeah.
reiterates Jason's point that you don't get all the 3-bedroom units. Individually, you only get these.
Right, okay, and thank you, George, that's why.
That's this section that you're talking about right here, so we say run 100%.
On page 72.
Yes, on page 72.
Yes,
Everyone that's up there, right, Catherine? This is the section that you're speaking of?
Yeah, I think that's where George's suggestion was.
Yes,
Yes.
correct.
If you can make that addition, thank you,
The
sir.
heading that says 100% AMI.
Yeah, like, so
Add
that's funny that you would think that, and I think that's a good point to bring out here, like. The development is only concerned about allocating units into these AMI levels. The people buying them are gonna be restricted by their own income as to what units they can buy. You're thinking anybody at that AMI limit gets run of the place.
That's how I read it.
I could appreciate how,
Okay,
like, when you
yeah,
say
no,
like,
I
it's
see-
not
yeah, I
100% lottery, you're thinking AMI. you're
Yeah,
not
no, from-
necessarily, so I think like.
Yeah,
we
from a
kind of-
developer standpoint, we're not concerned necessarily about. Like, this definition is what units are 100% AMI allocated.
Yeah,
and what
exactly.
20 and what-
We'll clear that up.
Yeah.
That's a super easy thing to do.
Super easy.
Appreciate the feedback.
Well, she's reading it as the people and you're reading it as the
As
units.
the
And I think
units.
if we just stipulate that it's both, then you solve the problem.
Yep.
Yes.
it is.
Like calling a good team. He's a developer, I'm the people.
Other,
Person too.
I'm a developer too.
Sometimes.
depends on the day.
Catch me on the right day.
Anything else for Lala and Jason on this lottery implementation plan?
Let's say anytime that you can make examples, put examples in there. For instance, in 2.232, it's talking about household size. A household can only purchase one bedroom more than their household size. We may think that that's pretty self-explanatory, put an example in.
Okay,
Wherever you can add examples, add examples.
perfect.
That's a great comment. Thank you.
If we're talking about approving this today and concept, I guess,
Yeah.
then I think it would be good to have any changes that define more clearly, just to have those distributed to them, so that we know what those changes were.
Yeah, whatever, save this document and then track changes.
Right, exactly.
Okay,
I agree.
how do you do that?
I will show you. You have trouble with it. I know you do. I've seen you not find the button.
Not suggesting.
He's never accepting.
Other comments on the lottery implementation plan? Okay,
One other thing real quick.
yeah,
And that would be maybe a general paragraph or two to start the whole document off about how we came on this process, what best practices we utilize to get here, and any other information that might be of benefit to somebody who actually goes and reads through it to set the tenor.
Like a purpose statement?
Yes, exactly.
Okay,
Good idea.
Just a suggestion.
no, it's great.
No, it's fine. I like it.
To overuse the UDC analogy here. There's actually purpose and intent statements for every regulation that you would have in a land use code like that. And so I can appreciate that.
Thank
Hey,
you.
Jason, can you clarify something for me? Just because we approved earlier this year, I guess the lottery plan. So this is the implement, so what was that called again? The lottery? Because we already approved something with the lottery and this is the implementation.
Yeah, so what you guys was the weighted lottery preferences.
Okay, gotcha.
Yes, and so the lottery is more than just that. But that was obviously a very material component to the lottery that we needed to have a policy discussion about. We have that's in here. Now we have like, okay, how are we going to verify that you've lived or worked in Routt County for 5+ years? How are we going to verify that your household is 4+, four more people? That's the kind of the purpose of this, and then how we're running the lotteries, as we spent quite a bit of time discussing
Thank you.
by unit.
anything else? These were great comments. Okay, then I will seek a motion for the approval of the lottery implementation plan concept as a draft document of this policy, with the condition that a final document will be available to the board at the end of the summer for their approval.
I will make that motion with the addition that it includes the amendments that George had requested. And was there any other, and there was one that Jim requested.
Yep.
I'll make that motion.
Great. First by Captain. Second by Jess. Anything else on this?
I do have a discussion point. I want to make one comment. I did make the motion. I am supporting this, but I am supporting the implementation plan. I do still stand by my minority negative vote on the preference.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification, Kat. Anyone else? Okay, all those in favor of approving the motion on the floor, please indicate with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing and hearing none, the motion passes unanimously. And we'll move to our next agenda item, which is the review and approval of the extended leave policy. And I will turn it over to Jess, who has graciously
Can I
agreed
share my screen?
to be
Yeah,
the presenter.
you should be able to.
Okay. Doesn't like it. Oh.
Your own cybersecurity.
I know, right?
Very secure.
I outsmarted myself. Okay, trying again. Okay, cool. All right, just for everybody following along. So hopefully everyone had the opportunity to take a look at the policy itself. This is just to help us walk through any conversation or any questions that folks have. It's funny, that's not how it looks on my screen. No, it's nothing. I don't know, Jason, this might have been a bad idea. Probably don't really see the slides.
Can you present that?
Yeah, I can present. That's not a problem. We'll give you one more chance, Jess.
Oh, Maddie, you're young. Why isn't this working?
Andy, technical support?
It's funnier than anything else.
Okay.
I don't know if it'll just navigate through it though like this.
There you go. View slideshow, look, there you go.
Hey, are you you're doing it? Thank you.
Gotcha.
Appreciate that. So I can stop sharing. Yeah, excellent. Okay, so it's in Jason's best interest that we all approve this because he doesn't get to take his break if we don't. So appreciate that. So just to be very transparent from the outset, the forcing mechanism for the board considering this was that Jason made a request to the board that we, consider an extended leave as part of his contract for this year. However, that's not the reason to do it. The reason to do it is because from an HR perspective, this is a good policy for the organization. So, very quickly to unpack the rationale here. And I should say, by way of background, I've worked in and alongside government my entire career. So I worked for the state for 15 years. And I work for nonprofits now, but adjacent to government. So I have a lot of experience with HR and workforce issues inside of the public sector. Public sector jobs are different. So if you've never had the benefit of being a public servant, it's a little bit of a different universe than if you are used to working in the private sector. Retention is critical for all employers, obviously. The housing authority isn't going to be able to accomplish its mission if we aren't able to keep staff around. But inside of the public sector specifically, tenure for local government employees nationwide is a little bit less than 7 years, which is germane to the threshold of when someone becomes eligible for this policy. Replacement costs are very high for everyone. It can be up to 150% of salary in a year to replace an employee. That becomes particularly true in resort economies like the one that we're in here. As everybody who lives here knows, that's not easy to attract people to the Yampa Valley, in large part because it's hard for people to find a place to live. And clearly we all know that, or we wouldn't be sitting here. So being able to keep the staff that we have through incentives like extended leave benefit is really critical to the organization. And I would argue that we're in a very unique economy here in Knob County and Steamboat Springs that makes that need even more pressing. Public sector employees also on average are earning 20 to 50% less than what they would be able to command in the private sector. And that's not to make our current public sector employees start looking for jobs. But the reality is that you make less money as a public servant, and usually governments are in the practice of compensating for that lower wage through things like really robust benefits. Oftentimes that can be things like pensions, but it also usually includes pretty generous leave policies that are not the norm in the private sector. So I share all of that rationale because I'm talking with some folks who are on the board who maybe don't have that experience of working in public sector employment. This has been a little like, wait, what do you want to do? But I assure you that this is not an unusual policy. And in fact, governments all across the country are doing things very similar to this in order to hold on to their staff. So the other thing that is in the preamble to the policy itself, but is also recognizing the value of people who stick around for a while. Anybody who has been new in a job knows that it can take a few years to get up to speed. And so we really do see a benefit organizationally for keeping folks around for a longer shelf life. That becomes more and more important as generations get younger. The average, years spent on the job is less than 3 for most people who are younger millennials or Gen Xers. And so having incentive policies around saying like, hey, we want you to stick around here long enough to really know what you're doing and to provide a lot of benefit. Setting the threshold here at 7 years is intentional. It's not accidental. And of course, the Housing Authority wants to invest in our workforce and to show the employees of the organization that they're valued, because when people feel valued, they do good work. That's not rocket science. I think we've all probably experienced that. So next slide, Jason. So kind of the details here of the policy, somebody is eligible for this extended leave after 7 years of continuous full-time employment. It is a one-time benefit. It's not something that is vested. You don't get to take it with you when you leave. It's not going to pay out in the way that annual leave often does when there's a separation from an organization. So this is a one-time use case, paid leave of up to 5 consecutive weeks. So that's what the extended leave term is. It can be, per the policy, combined with vacation leave for up to 10 consecutive weeks out of office, assuming somebody has that amount of annual leave in their reserve bank. But the extended leave itself is a 5-week duration. And again, it's not accrued, it's not vested. Oftentimes annual leave, people think about the employee owns the annual leave, right? When you leave, it goes with you, you can cash that out. This is not something the employee owns, it's something the organization owns. So in that sense, it's much more comparable to sick leave is a better analog. Next slide. So distinction between vacation leave and YVHA has a handbook and a policy around all the different types of leave that are available, which I think that the board has been given recently. Everybody should have access to. But vacation leave per the Housing Authority policy is accrued each pay period. It's based upon your years of service. You can use it in the way probably most people here who have worked are familiar with, flexibly with approval. And as I said, it belongs to the employee, so it goes with you at the point of separation. The extended leave, one time. So at 7 years, you become eligible. You could wait 10 years and take it then. You could wait 20 years and take it then. But once you take it, that benefit doesn't come back. It's a single use case. Cannot be paid out on separation. It also is intended to be taken in one interrupted block. And so the idea here is not that you can use it in an hourly piecemeal like you can with annual or sick leave. You use it in whole chunks. And there's some details around, well, what about holidays that fall over that period? That's detailed in the policy. It can't be broken up and it can't be rescheduled. You can't do it again after you use it the one time. Next slide. I think some of the larger concerns that the board expressed are just around operational needs. So if somebody is going to be out for an extended period of time, how do we make sure that business is still being conducted and the Housing Authority is doing what it's supposed to do? So there's some conditions in the policy itself that kind of outline the approval process. We're looking for a notification, ideally of at least 3 months in advance. And there's some, the policy mentions that work coverage and planning needs to happen. The policy itself is a leave policy, so it doesn't dictate the process of that. That wouldn't be appropriate, but it does acknowledge that that's an important consideration. There's also language in here about the eligibility criteria for staff. In addition to 7 years, there's some considerations that a manager might make along the lines of, are you a good performer? Are you reliable? Do you have a habit of excessive leave use or, not being very dependable? So all of those things are things a manager and or Jason as executive director could consider in determining to approve an extended leave request or not. YVHA is a very small organization, so obviously we can't have folks taking it concurrently, and it might be operationally challenging to even have multiple folks taking it inside of a year without some careful planning. The policy acknowledges all of that and allows the Housing Authority to make those discretions at its own determination. And, very clear that this isn't a right of an employee, but it's a benefit and a privilege. So, I think all told, the policy itself is pretty comprehensive. I understand that George reviewed it. I also understand that the HR attorney that YVHA utilizes also reviewed it. So that's kind of in a nutshell what the policy contains. And I think then it's up for, to the board to move to any deliberation, questions, or clarification.
Thank you, Jack. Anything from other members? Dakota?
I remember it being part of our discussion to look at, like, what's the average to compensate employees who are taking on extra workload. I didn't see that as part of this. So is that something that we're still looking into?
I actually think that language is in the policy, and I can double check Dakota. It doesn't say that that's like a guarantee. So this policy, like if you think about how you use vacation pertains to you, right, as the employee taking vacation. How, let's say you're going on vacation and I'm filling in for you. What that means for me as the person filling in wouldn't be in the vacation policy. However, this does talk about the housing authority's ability to redistribute workload and to work with other staff on what that might mean. So I think we landed on the side of, in the vacation or the extended leave policy, we don't want to stipulate how an absence will be managed operationally, but it does say that that's a component of what has to be done. I think depending on an individual circumstance, it might be appropriate to consider, additional compensation depending on the unique conditions of who's leaving and who's filling in. I know, Jason, if you have more thoughts about how you would handle that.
Yeah, I mean, so within our policy or within our HR policy, we have like temporary assignments and things like that that may be necessary for somebody to, step into an acting role, if that makes sense. And that would then include some type of potential pay, but I think we handle it on a case by case basis because there are some scenarios where we can promote from within, if that makes sense, or adjust from within. Others would, you think about like a maintenance person, like we may have to contract out some maintenance responsibility or something along those lines. And so that would be just a different approach to covering that. Would still have a cost to it. So anyhow, the idea being that it really, we want to acknowledge that that's, that, employees may be eligible for temporary role adjustments as a result of this, and then we handle that within a different section within the HR policy.
But there is a fiscal impact. And according to this, it's to be determined. I'd like more specificity, if possible, or at least a range within the fiscal constraints of this policy, what it could or should be. To leave it out there as to be determined, it's pretty vague to me.
And I think that's the point of this that's not the point of this policy. This policy is very specific to take the extended leave. What happens outside of the extended leave does not belong in this policy.
But there's a fiscal impact.
Right, and that is going to be determined outside of this policy.
Well, I would
So
say there's a potential.
A potential,
Yeah,
right?
there's
Because
not a
sometimes,
guarantee.
sometimes there might be none. Sometimes there might be contracting a maintenance person. Sometimes there might be a raise or a small like additional compensation to a current employee. So those things need to be made outside of this policy because there could be none. There could be a little bit, there could be a little bit, like we don't know that until we evaluate each individual employee who is requesting this. And I think that's why in the policy, it says like, this is gonna be reviewed on an individual basis. And what that fiscal impact is, doesn't necessarily belong in the policy. It belongs with the exec committee or with the executive director.
And Jim, to give you like another, because I know this is new for many people, this concept, but to give you an analog that might be helpful, like, YVHA's annual and sick leave policies are fairly generous, and it seems like your sick leave caps are quite high. And so you could have somebody, let's say for medical purposes, who goes out for 10 weeks unpaid. The sick leave policy doesn't say, this is how YVHA will staff if, Jim has a health issue and is gone for 2 months, right? That's not in the sick leave policy, but it's part of the operational considerations of and that would live in normal planning, however the housing authority typically manages that.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, that's
And
helpful.
I think also, Jim, it also says, on number 3 here, it says that, the approval is subject to operational needs, strategic priorities, and team capacity.
Right.
So if all of a sudden YVHA is in a position that we just can't afford this, then that would be an option, then, that would be a discussion for that team at the time.
Got it.
So I
Within the
think,
policy.
yeah, I think Jess wrote this really solid to have the protections for the organization.
Very good. Thank you.
I also just want to add, well, first, I want to thank Jess for all your hard work on this and the exec committee and the policy committee. Like, this was a big ask to do in a month. And we talked about this last board meeting and we're already here with this really cleaned up policy. So thank you. I think that needs to be recognized. And also, as I review this policy, I think it's fair to mention that I just want to add, like, if we're an organization whose mission is to support healthy, thriving communities, then we need to walk the walk. And this means creating a workplace culture where our own people can thrive as well. And this job is hard. Public service is hard. And extended leave like this isn't just about retention, as Jess said, or all those points she made, but it's about acknowledging also the weight of the work that this staff does and aligning internal practices with the values that we promote every day. So I think that that is like at the heart of this policy more than anything else.
Thank you, Angelica.
Well said.
Thank you.
I guess I have a few more detailed questions. In part 2 of the extended leave usage and limitations, where it says may not exceed 10 consecutive weeks, that's combining vacation leave with extended leave.
Right.
Does YVHA also participate in the Colorado Family Program? We do not. Okay. And then I think in the approval section, it's saying that EL is approved by the executive director, but is somewhere in there it says executive director extended leave is approved by the board? Or is that just like the executive team?
That's a good question. I mean, I think obviously in the specific case of Jason requesting it, Jason is the employee of the board. So, I mean, we can clarify in the policy that, in the case of the executive, that the board would make the decision.
I mean,
but-
you approved his leave subject to this, and he only used it one time ever, so.
Don't need to.
But there could be a
Get a
future
different
executive director.
Yeah.
It's just something I need to know.
That's funny.
Jess,
I think clarifying
Yeah.
that is an easy fix.
Yeah, I do
It's
too.
like-
Yes,
Yeah.
I think that's a good point.
I think that's a great point.
That's all I had on that.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
a good point, Reese.
So Jessica, you've been around this. Is 7 years a typical service period?
I think that is actually, yeah, and the fact, Mark, that it coincides with the average tenure of a local government employee nationally is I think, a great reinforcement of choosing that 7-year timeframe. So if we know that as a local government, 6.8 years is the shelf life of a local government employee, setting this policy at 7, I think actually work towards that broader, retention objective that we have.
Just seems like it ought to be more like 10, but I have zero experience with it. You do, so.
Yeah, I think 7 is about right, and I think statistically, like, the average duration in a job now is, for most, across the labor force, is under 3 years. So setting it at 7 is actually pushing it, probably for men, especially for younger employees, don't tend to stick around in the same organization, which is what we're trying to combat.
And Mark, to your point, I mean, they can use it at 7 years, but since it's a one-time benefit, it doesn't mean that everyone will use it at 7 years.
Right.
So, I would imagine it will cross different tenures depending on people's life circumstances and when it makes most sense to use the benefit. Oh, Patrick, thank you, Jason.
Yeah, I just had one brief comment and a suggestion. I wanted to second the kudos to Jess for putting this together in such a short period of time. I think it's really excellent. And my suggestion is incredibly minor, but on the very last page, last item, number 7, I would just suggest to say YVHA reserves the right to amend or discontinue the plan for any reason.
Thanks, Patrick. Yeah, that's a good edit. Yep, easy to edit, yeah.
Sorry, a few more that I just thought of. Dakota also mentioned, is this only applying to full-time employees, right? Because I'm thinking maybe didn't like Sandy Jacobs have like some employment, then was a consultant and now is like an employee again?
So yes, this would count if you are a full-time employee. So 7 years of continuous full-time employment.
Okay.
Sort of like top line item there.
Yes, but the continuous part is important. So like, I don't know the specifics of Sandy, but if she had full-time employment for 3 years and then left for a year and then came back, the clock starts over when she
Yeah.
comes. So it's a consecutive employment is how it's written.
Got it. And then
Sandy's not here. She's on vacation, so we can talk about her all.
Extended leave vacation?
He's in
Is she
Costa
on the
Rica.
meeting like Elliot or no?
She's better at vacation than Elliot.
That's great.
I think I'm stating the obvious with this one, but say someone comes back from extended leave, they could also say that, you know, they can quit. right
Yeah, of
after
course. And that, I mean, that's normal
Yeah.
with leave provisions. That's true, you know, with family leave, that, I mean, that's just the
Yeah.
nature of being an at-will employer.
And then back to the family leave question, I was just thinking, do we have a paternity, maternity leave policy? No,
We do
okay,
not.
got it.
We do have
Short-term disability.
short-term disability, and we also have a scenario where we can create a basically a sick leave pool from our current like
Folks who donate.
who yeah
their sick
who have
leave.
a
Yeah.
load of sick time available to support the team member until they would hit that short-term disability threshold.
But if, let's say, YVHA decided to join family, would that make this policy more complicated? Because it's only 10 consecutive weeks. Like,
I mean,
could they
so
combine those if YVHA?
I don't know that YVHA, I mean, as a government organization, YVHA had the ability to opt out, and also many small employers generally opted out of family. If YVHA ever did, we would want to amend this to clarify what family leave is and how it is different from this extended leave policy. So to the extent that it would require like editing the policy to clarify the distinction, but other than that, I don't think it's inherently more complicated.
And the reason why we opted out of the family was because we have very generous sick time benefits. We have that sick time bank and we have short-term disability.
Cool.
Their comments and questions.
A quick question under the heading of extended leave request and approval process. Point number 3, there's 2 sentences, no issues with the first sentence. Second one states that YVHA reserves the right to limit how many employees may take extended leave in a given year to maintain business continuity. I believe I've seen other policies similar to this to say it is limited to 1 per calendar year. And I was wondering if why it is written as is.
I mean, I don't know that I thought very deeply about it, but I would say, like, I think the goal of any policy is to, I mean, in this case, it's to protect the organization and give the organization as much flexibility as possible. So in this particular case, if 2 employees requested it in a year and that was very tenable because of the nature of their duties, I wouldn't want the housing authority to feel arbitrarily forced to say no. In my experience, like my company has an extended leave, like we call it a sabbatical policy. It's not sabbatical, but oftentimes people will plan it around, you know, my kid is graduating from high school this year, or we're taking like the family trip of a lifetime, or, you know, they're usually big life events and people plan for it. And so if 2 employees wanted to do that inside the same calendar year and it didn't pose an operational hardship, why would we want to say no to that?
Okay.
And so I think this gives the housing authority the ability to decide.
And I think also in terms of flexibility, like what if we had an employee who wanted to start it like November, December of 2025, and then that would roll into 2026?
Sure.
You know what I mean? And so and then because they had 4 weeks in 2026, it's like, sorry, nobody else can take it. I think to Jess's point, the flexibility is key while protecting the organization.
And also it could be, we could have the maintenance person want to go, you know, the same year that the executive director, they probably don't really have conflicting, you know, that would probably work operationally. So I like what Jay said, keep it Jess said, keep it flexible.
Good questions. Anything else? Okay. Well, then I will seek a motion to approve the extended leave policy with the following changes. One, a clarification to include that the executive director leave is approved by the board. And two, that item number 7 on page 3, which is under additional provisions, the language is amended to reflect that YVHA reserves the right to amend and discontinue. Yeah, the executive leave plan for any reason.
So moved.
First by
So Patrick, second.
Patrick, was
That
that
was
you?
me. That was
Okay,
me.
great. Second by Patrick.
All time.
Anything else on this for the good of the order? Seeing none. All those in favor of approving the extended leave policies with the amended conditions, please indicate with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing and hearing none, the motion passes unanimously. And I believe, oh my gosh, this is amazing. That it is 1:40. So now I will seek a motion to adjourn our meeting early.
So moved.
First by Kathy,
Second.
second by Jess. And just to clarify, we are planning for a 3-hour meeting in May. So enjoy your 20 minutes now and move that extra hour in May. Thanks, everyone.